Welcome and good evening. I'm Sarita Murray, and for those who don't know, I'm a Treasury consultant by day and have been heavily involved in diversity and inclusion for a number of years. And I founded an events company that focuses on increasing the awareness of diversity and inclusion in many areas. I'm also a member of the Baton Awards team, and I have the pleasure of introducing the very first Baton Awards webinar. For those who are new to the Baton Awards was founded in 2018. And is an award ceremony that recognizes the achievements of women across diverse racial backgrounds across a number of industries, including technology, professional services, and media. Our aim is to recognize and provide a platform for women and all the achievements that they've made in their industry. The Baton Awards promotes and encourages leaders in various industries to pass the baton down to rising stars and also provide mentorship. Now in its third year, we wanted to make it even bigger, and we wanted to deliver events throughout the year. We wanted to provide you with encouragement and recognition throughout the year. The Baton Awards is a movement, and we want to make sure that you all feel this. Today's webinar, we will look at visibility, voice, and validation. And we have Michelle Moore, who will be our facilitator for today's session. Thanks everybody for attending, and I hope you enjoyed today's session. Michelle Moore, over to you.
Thank you, Sarita. A very warm welcome to all of you today who join us from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from Twitter, from YouTube, and the Instagram crew. I'm Michelle Moore. I'm a leadership consultant, executive coach, and a speaker. I'm going to be taking you through this evening, and I'll be hosting and asking the questions. So we're really excited to have you with us today. And first and foremost, I want to send love and light to everybody on this webinar. We are living in extraordinary times. I will take you through tonight. We will keep to time. I've got a sports background, so I'm going to refer to you as my team. We're going to be having an informal conversation about visibility, recognition, and reward, and everything that goes within that. We've got an esteemed panel with us. We want your engagement. We want you to take part in the chat. There'll be a Q&A after the panel discussion where we'll get a chance to answer some of your questions too. So, we will be talking about visibility and the need for greater recognition of women of colour, in particular, for their significant and humongous contribution to the workplace and to broader society. This is especially important and especially timely at this time. They're often a marginalised and invisible group. So we're going to be delving into that. We're also going to be hearing joyous stories of reward and recognition from our panelists, who are amazing in their own rights. So does that sound okay? If I was in the room with you people, I would be having some smiles. So I'm hoping that in the chat, you can raise your hand and say, yeah, you're up for it. So let's go. One of the things we're going to do is the panelists are going to introduce themselves in 60 seconds. That's their first challenge. And what I have to say about these panelists and these amazing trailblazing women is that they have one thing in common. And that is that they are all global change makers. They are awesome. So let's start our proceedings today. And we have first and foremost, Donna Herdsman, who's going to introduce herself and then hand over to Vanessa and then Diane.
So good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for that wonderful introduction to the event, Michelle and Sarita. So my name's Donna Herdsman. I'm a professional services executive with over 30 years worth of experience, both garnered here in the UK. For those that know me really well, I love to talk about my time working in South Africa with Nelson Mandela's government, but we don't have time for me to go into that tonight. And I'm also very passionate about mentoring and coaching, especially coaching young people and women who are trying to navigate their way through the myriad, both of life itself, but also the conundrum that's called corporate life. And in particular, I'm really, really pleased to say that I'm a judge for a number of awards, but last year I became Baton Award torchbearer. And that was my first year of really being involved with the Baton Awards, and above all, seeing the fantastic talent that is out there, which the Baton Awards helps to shine a light on. So that's me in a nutshell. You'll be hearing more from me during the night, and I'd like to hand over to Michelle. Oh, sorry, hand over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Donna, and thanks, Michelle, and thanks to Batons for having me. So just a real quick introduction who I am. Vanessa Vallely, founder of wearethecity.com and wearetechwomen.com. Prior to that, 25 years, 9 different banks, working in corporates. Set up We Are the City because I was just frustrated at the lack of women around my leadership table. So I wanted to create a free resource where women could go to find resources to help them drive their own careers. So left corporate job about 7 years ago to focus on We Are the City, again, to focus on women in tech. So I do a number of different things other than strategically run We Are the City. I do a bit of public speaking. I do a lot of work with kids in schools as well, and loads of different women's groups. I run Gender Networks, which is the heads of about 95 different women's networks, but generally anything to do with gender parity or equality for women, I've kind of got my fingers in most of those pies. So that's me. So without further ado, over to the amazing Diane.
Hello, my name's Dr. Diane Riney. I am the founder of the Baton Awards, which I founded in 2018. I really founded it because I had an amazing role model, which was my mother, and I really wanted to have women who look like me to have the opportunity to have somebody who they could look up to and also pass the baton down to. In my career, I've been in business for over 20 years. I run a social cause agency, and we're always looking at very important issues from gender to race to disability and anything in between. So I'm just so happy to be on our first webinar to really share my passion in regards to really changing the landscape for women of colour and for women of diverse racial backgrounds. So over back to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Diane. And so we're going to kick off really, and we want to get some audience participation straight away. And we want to start with that question: what does visibility mean to you? So in the audience, those of you, our delegates, my team, just drop a one word or a short phrase into the chat. What does it actually mean to you? And now to my panelists. To Donna, I want to start with you, Donna. What does it actually mean to you when you hear that word?
So I was always taught that visibility was about being seen, but being careful about how you use your voice. And that really, I think, materialized for me when I was 11 years old, when I got told by my form teacher that there was no way I could be in the top set because I was black. So even though he had seen me, he didn't see me in the way that everybody else saw me, which was a bright young girl with the ability, to be anything that I could be. So it's quite interesting. In preparation for tonight, I actually looked up the definition of visibility, and one of them, which is the third description of visibility, is the degree to which something has attracted general attention and prominence. And therefore, as a woman of colour, I think one of the challenges we have is that being visible is simply not enough. We have to use our voices. We have to be careful how we use our voices, and that we have to have something of value to add and to say in order to ensure that people see us for who we really are, rather than applying labels to us as to who they think we ought to be.
Yeah, really, really powerful, that kind of marginalisation. Thank you. And Vanessa, what does it mean to you?
So being visible to me, again, to Donna's point, I get to be in the room and I get to be part of the conversation. So it's being seen and being heard. But there's also another aspect of visibility, and that's around the credit for my work, or the credit for your work, because that all aims in visibility, because that kind of visibility leads to opportunities as well. When you are in the room and you are delivering and you are part of that amazing project, that people actually see that and recognize you, because that puts your name into a more visible arena. So for me, it means a lot of that. And also another thing, that visibility is not just important for the individual, but whether you're talking about corporations or you're talking about society, that visibility of that individual is so important, again, especially from a role model perspective, because you can't be what you can't see. So that's what visibility means to me.
Great. We just had that. If you can't see it, you can't believe it, from Claudia on the chat. Brilliant. Reward and recognition, acknowledgement. Oh, we've got loads of people getting involved. That's fantastic. And Diane, what does it mean to you?
And a lot of what my panelists have said, it's all about being visible for me to make change and to show that change is possible. Because when I deal with a lot of young women and they've come to the Baton Awards, they've gone away saying, I feel inspired. Oh my God, there's somebody who's really achieving in sport or STEM. And because they see it, they can believe it. So visibility is all about that for me. And it's really about that pipeline. It's really helping that pipeline get on the ladder, and it's really helping for, even like for somebody like myself, to look up and see about what else people can do. I can look from them and see people who've gone before me.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? To kind of go back to the past and think about the future as well. So kind of link into that, Diane. Why did you set up the Baton Awards? What's it all about? Why have you set it up? What you just come up with it on the back of an envelope? What's the deal? Come on.
I wish I did. It really was because I had such a great role model, which was my mum. And unfortunately, my mum died really suddenly. And it made me more than ever realize once that role model was gone, I was trying to look in other places to see somebody who could give me that inspiration, that guidance. And it was just wasn't there. And especially for women who look like me, it was even harder to find anybody that I could really look up to. And when I was speaking to young people, I mean, there was a girl in particular who said she wanted to get into media and news reading. And I said to her, oh my God, have you heard of Moira Stewart? And she looked at me like I was crazy and said,
oh, Moira Stewart, brilliant.
And I thought, oh my God, she's paved the way for young Black girls, young women like yourselves. And I thought, there's a gap here. We really need to do something to really get visibility for women who have paved the way, and to show the younger generation that it's possible. It is possible.
But I think, can I just say that? I think, because someone mentioned the word pipeline, I think one of the challenges we have is that pipeline's not always there. You know, so sometimes you are the only one. So when you're looking up, when you're trying to look up into your organization, there is actually nobody there. And I think, you know, one of the things the awards helps is to know it's okay to look outside your organization or your immediate circle in order to find that inspiration.
Yeah, brilliant point. It's about being the first of difference as well. There's a whole kind of thinking around that. Yeah, so thank you for that. And so just on that then, Donna, why is it so important that we have awards for women of colour? You know, there are lots of awards out there, the Asian Achievement Awards in football, the Football Blacklist. There are awards for particular different racial and diverse groups, and there's always a bit of some backlash. Why do we need those kinds of awards? Why do they need them? Why is it so significant that we have an awards that recognises marginalised and minority groups?
So, you know, one of my inspirations when I was growing up was Martin Luther's, you know, speech, I Have a Dream. And I referred to that because if you think about, I think it was 2 years ago when we looked at the BAFTA Awards, 3 years ago when you looked at the Oscar Awards, what you saw was that even though there were many, many people they could choose from, people of colour, none of them were recognised on the shortlist, never mind being allocated an award. And, you know, my dream is that one day it won't matter because talent will out, irrespective of the background. But unfortunately, as a society, we are not there yet. The people that are making decisions about who goes on the shortlist, you know, tend to choose people that look just like them. And if the majority, therefore, are not people of colour, then our ability to be recognised is highly constrained. So the reason that there is a room for awards like these is because you've got two options, haven't you? You can roll over and complain, or you can step up and be counted. And I think the people that have set up the awards, and we've got two great examples with us today, are people that have stepped up to be counted and are providing a platform for people to also step up, to be counted, and to celebrate their success.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just kind of linking into that, there's something about privilege, isn't there? There's something about the privileges that go with people that are in the majority. So the disparities between women of colour and white women mean that they are disproportionately affected by the fact that we don't have access to some of those rooms. So that point was really, really well made. And Donna, your words are coming to light with this stream of sunshine coming through. It's great. I love it. It's like you're illuminated. Wonderful. So it's an amazing segue. You can see what we're like, people, on this webinar. We want to get into it, but at the same time, we want to bring a little bit of lightness. So Vanessa, you're working on We Are the City. I mean, it's been around since 2008, if I remember correctly. So you have been rewarding and recognising women and doing the work in terms of gender equality and campaigning for some time now, for over a decade. Why are these awards so important?
So I mean, generically, awards are important because it does give that recognition to people. And also, when you get these awards, it gives you a platform to do more. So the more awards we have that showcase a diverse range of role models, the more important. And I'm absolutely with Donna. I would love there to be a day where my awards don't need to exist, Diane's awards don't need to exist, you know, all of those, but we're not there yet. So I think, you know, in terms of showcasing talent, and also what I noticed, having judged the Batons before as well, you know, you uncover these amazing individuals that you never knew that even existed, that are doing incredible things. How would we ever have known about those achievements if we didn't have awards such as these? So, you know, as much as I say, you know, I'd like there to be no awards landscape, you know, we live in a society that's, you know, where everyone's got their seat at the table. We're not there yet. But from these awards perspective for, you know, marginalised groups and that, absolutely, you know, let's level the playing field in terms of the awards that are out there, which, let's face it, 99% of them all look the same.
Yeah. Really, really powerful point. And just linking to that then, you know, when we think about the next bit in terms of some organizations, and with your background, Diane, in working with some global corporates, what is it that organizations, both public sector and corporate sector, can do that actually recognizes the contribution and the talents of women of color? That's, you know, it's well rehearsed. Diversity, inclusion, ethnicity, gender pay gaps, it's all out there. We know diversity pays. We know that it brings back reward, you know, 35% if that you have an ethnic diversity within your organization, that is the dividend back to you. What can organizations do to do better at recognizing the talent of women of color?
I think they can do quite a few things, but in regards to what we're talking about today, it's about they need to nominate them. Because they keep saying for so long, oh, we can't find the talent, it's not there, there's no pipeline. But it's about looking within their organization, nominating these amazing women. Because last year, I remember we had a lady, God, I can't remember her name, but she was in the professional services. And she's one of the few Black women doing a construction job. It was something really unique. But she was one of maybe 3 in the whole of the country. And somebody outside of the organization nominated her. And then when she went back with the award, they were like, oh, wow. They were so stunned. And I was like, why didn't you recognize this lady anyway? She's in your, and she very much is a, you know, I talk about intersectionality all the time, but she's got double discrimination. She's a woman and she's Black. So
I think you're talking about Ronnie Savage. I think it's Ronnie that you're talking about.
I mean, yeah, there's just Ronnie's another one. But it was just amazing how I find that people who are nominated, I do think the corporates have to get on board more, and it will show that they're taking us seriously, and then that will then filter down throughout the organisation.
So Donna, just in terms of your management experience over 25 years of working with, you know, some of the biggest companies out there, what do you think that companies and organizations can be doing better around recognizing talents?
So, you know, I hear what Diane's saying, but I think there's a step way before that. You know, nomination, you know, it's because someone has seen you. Often, if you are in an organization, they're still trying to work out what it is you actually bring when compared to your peer group. And you know, when you talk about race, which, you know, we have to touch on today, it's a conversation that makes very many people really uncomfortable. And therefore, because it's an uncomfortable conversation, most people really don't delve beneath the data that they have. They don't look at why it seems to be so much harder. And, you know, clearly I'm generalizing, but why it's so much harder for a woman of color to get that big assignment that brings you in front of the global CEO, you know, to Vanessa's point earlier, which not only puts you at a place at the table, it puts you at the top table. So unless you get that kind of not just visibility, but you're seen to add significant value to the organization that you're in, they tend to be loath to nominate you. And even if you win, they may not celebrate it. So, you know, what I think organizations need to do is that, you know, it has to start at home. It has to start with leadership, recognizing the talent that everyone brings, because I think we're also driving for an inclusive organization. You know, the talent everybody brings, how their differences drive innovation, drive profitability, and that it's okay to celebrate. And in celebrating, you're celebrating everybody, because nobody that I know achieves anything in life without the support of other people.
Yeah. But there's something really, go for it, Vanessa.
Just to add to that, you know, around horror stories, around awards, we had one lady win one of our awards. And when she went back to the office, she was told by a line manager not to tell anyone because it would make other people feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And the beauty of that story, there was about 3 months later, they phoned us up because they wanted to do some stuff around gender. So I got invited in to talk, and I listened to this whole 40 minutes of how wonderful they are and the stuff they're doing for women. And I couldn't help but replay back that story, you know, and the lady subsequently left. And this is the thing. If those organisations have that talent in their organisations and they are not recognised and they're not given those projects that will enable their light to shine, they will leave and they will vote with their feet. So they're listening.
Yeah, I mean, there's something there about how racism operates, though, how the structural inequalities within organisations operate in a way that continually marginalises groups of women and women of colour. And so therefore, when there isn't a representation of women of colour at any kind of middle management and senior management level, not only does it mean that women within that organisation don't have those role models, that it means that the decision making isn't the best that it can be within that organisation. And there's something about what you said there, Donna, was really important about power, because if you acknowledge and see the visibility aspect, but actually with that comes power, actually. And for some organisations, and some leadership teams, that power is quite threatening. And I think there's something there around the inequalities that exist. So I just want to kind of just double check, Diane, did you want to add anything to there before we move on? I think that was
I think they're all good. They're all amazing points in regards to.
We've got an amazing panel, haven't we? We've got an incredible panel. So that's why they're amazing. So there are like many barriers that women are experiencing in the workplace, from sexism to racism to the intersectionalities of all of those oppressions and how they work together. So that's for everybody on this call. We've got people in communities, people from public and corporate sector organisations. And their visibility is affected by those structural inequalities. You know, their pay is affected by that, but everything that goes with their own individual profile is negatively impacted upon. And I think it's important for us to kind of give some real tools and advice. We want this to be practical for our audience as much as possible. So, Vanessa, I know you kind of talk about this work a lot. What advice would you give to women to raise their visibility?
So, I mean, I'm going to come at it from a generic perspective, right? So there are a lot of things that we can, I think where this started, and I'm a true believer, you know, the conversation my boss was having with his boss was not about my career, right? So there are things that we can try to do for ourselves. And sometimes, and I'm sure Donna's going to pick up, the visibility is harder for different sets of individuals. But in terms of kind of raising your own profile, you know, I'm a big believer in building your network if you can. If you're in an organisation that has internal events, and obviously it's a little bit difficult at the moment because we're locked down with Corona, but any internal event that is going on, go to. Meet people, get a chance to tell them your story. And sometimes, again, I know we're going to come on to talking about your story when we talk about nominations. That feels a little bit uncomfortable. but the visibility part has to come from you as well. So building your network, why do we need, to Donna's point, we need people to help us along the way. The people that we meet could become potential mentors, potential sponsors. So that's the one thing that I would advocate. And even from a London perspective, I know we've probably got people in from the UK, there are 2,000 women's networks in London. 2,000, and they are for gender, they're for race, they're for disability, LGBT. You could go to the opening of an envelope every single night, right, and meet people, and if you feel uncomfortable, take someone with you. So the first thing is, who is in your army, who is kind of supporting you from a networking perspective? That's the first thing. One thing not to forget is that, you know, we don't live in a world where we can meet people face to face, so people are going to look you up, and they're going to look you up online. What do they see? Think about that as your shop window. If I'm looking in your shop window, I don't want to see an empty store. I want to know about you. Tell me what you've done. Tell me what you've achieved. And also, I know there's a lot of people feel very uncomfortable about putting themselves out there, and I totally get it. The imposter syndrome kicks in. You know, am I bragging? Am I boasting? But there is an element of, you need to tell me a little bit about you, because if I know about you, I can open up doors of opportunity. So, you know, things like having a decent LinkedIn profile that talks about you, not about your company and its 60,000 employees and where it's, you know, where it's domiciled around the world. I want to know your story. So just things like having your network, being visible online. There's loads of other stuff I could go into, but I don't want to hog all the time. But they are the two things. Make sure that you've got people behind you, supporting you, telling your story when you're not in the room.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa. And I know you're described as one of the most well-networked women in the whole of the UK. So everybody on this call, make sure that you've recorded that. This is on a recording. Make sure you've written down your notes, and be sure to look Vanessa up as well. Diane, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
I agree with Vanessa. It is about raising your personal profile and taking that kind of responsibility. But I think it is a different journey for me as a Black woman. And I think that comes with different imposter syndrome times 10, you know, because when you do that, if you're not being recognized, number one, and then you feel that you're being further not being recognized because of your color, so you've got a double whammy, you don't want to shout about yourself. And it seems like when you do, you're seen as being bossy, or, you know, or something like that. So I know there's so many women who look like me who wouldn't even dream to put themselves forward. It would just be the most uncomfortable position. But I do think with more visibility and all these types of awards and all that, it hopefully will encourage you to take that step to push yourself forward a little bit more.
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, so, you know, I've got a slightly different perspective, I think, in that, you know, one of the reasons I think I've had a really interesting career is I was always either lucky or I planned. I think it's probably more luck than planning to find influential sponsors. And what I mean by that, it was people that when they spoke, everybody else listens to. And when you're in a minority, you need to find people whose voice exceeds, you know, the fact that they're one person, because then others will sit up and take note. You still have to prove yourself, you still have to deliver, but then people are prepared to give you the chance to demonstrate the skills that you know that you've got. And I think that takes me to another point, is you really have to believe in yourself. And if you're stuck, go and ask for help. The amount of times people, you know, find someone friendly, clearly, but the amount of times people just don't go and ask for help. And I can honestly say, every time I've asked for help, people have stepped up. And I remember when I first joined IBM, so I was ex-PricewaterhouseCoopers, the language at IBM was completely different to anything I'd ever heard in my entire life. And I went to this executive and I said to her, please, will you help me? Because in meetings, I'm lost, you know, and I've got a good brain, but it doesn't really compute because I don't understand what they're talking about, you know. And she took me under her wing and helped me understand the nature of the business, the way they discussed business, so that I became far more confident in my ability to contribute entirely. But the one thing I will say is that, you know, I believe microaggressions and imposter syndrome, as Diane said, are aligned. you know, because sometimes you take 2 steps forward only to find you end up taking 4 steps back. And as you get more microaggressions, you fear about stepping forward. And I think, you know, and I'll say this to everyone, surround yourself, and it doesn't have to be huge, surround yourself with people that love you for you, that are supportive of you, and will give you good insights to enable you to absorb those microaggressions, heal from them, and come out ready to show the world what you're really made of.
There's something about that's really powerful, because there's something about the impact of racism and sexism on women of colour specifically, and actually how we become professionally and emotionally resilient and able to kind of survive our environments, but not only that, to thrive so that we can become visible is a real challenge. And that's why we need companies and organizations to be anti-racist in their settings and in their cultures and the way in which they work, for sure. And that point that you made, Donna, about sponsorship, I think is really key. I mean, mentoring and sponsorship, I think, can go hand in hand, but organizations that have sponsorship opportunities and programs in place for staff that are from a minority background, I really can see some of the benefit of creating those opportunities and getting the pipeline into leadership right. But I just wanted to say there wasn't luck. It's not luck, Donna. Is opportunity meets something. I can't think about it now because it just doesn't come to me. Somebody might have it in the chat, but there's an Oprah Winfrey quote: opportunity meets something equals luck. So the fact that you have achieved all of the things that you have achieved does not happen by luck, Donna Herdsman. I'm just letting you know that now.
But I do think though it's about it's about having those people who do champion you. Yes. You know, it's really important, because you'll have days when you want to go home and just cry. You know, they might not see that, the public doesn't see that, but they might speak to a girlfriend and a member in your circle, and they pick you up, and you need that. It's really important. And even about sponsorship, which I think Donna is so on point. Some people don't even understand what that means. Like, they'll be like, well, how do I get what's a sponsor? How do I get a sponsor? They really generally don't understand what that means. So it's also about us really educating people about what's the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. Some people don't know the difference. So it's about having these conversations.
Michelle, can I come in on that one? Because this has been a bee in my bonnet for many years around sponsorship, and I've been talking to corporates about it. And the thing is that individuals, to Diane's point, don't understand what good sponsorship looks like. So I'll tell you a real quick story of a gentleman that I saw that to me demonstrated good sponsorship. So he's senior leader in an organization. He took 3 women, all from different backgrounds, under his wing. So his job was to advocate for them. He spent time getting to know about each one of them, what it is that they've achieved, where they wanted to go. That was the first thing. The second thing he did is he would, when he had his meetings with his cohort, he would give them examples of his work. He would show them board papers, non-confidential ones, that he had to review to make an informed decision in a meeting that was coming up. And he'd give it to the cohort and he would say, have a look at them. What decision would you make? And they would work for it. So they were getting exposure to work that they wouldn't normally have seen. So that's the first thing. Then he took one of them each time into that meeting. He opened his network to those women. He brought them in. He said, this is so-and-so, part of my mentor group. She'll be shadowing me today. So she sat there in the meeting with all of these other bigwigs, getting to know them, meeting them, expanding her network. So the visibility side of it was there as well. So not only was he showing what it looks like, and what do you know, she then got to know those individuals. When they saw her in the corridor, they know who she was. So that to me, again, is good sponsorship. For one of them, there was a particular part of the business that she wanted to go to. He was the one that opened up that door. I've been working with this cohort of women. I've got someone there. So sometimes it's not that the corporates, and I am by no way defending them, it's not that they don't get it. It's that the individuals that they need to sponsor don't understand what that looks like. So I think that's where we need, and some of that has to come from us to kind of say to people, you know, I want you to sponsor me. You know, this is what that looks like, kind of thing. And just, you know, it sounds a bit like taking the horse to water, but sometimes that's what we have to do.
Definitely. I think that's a really powerful point, Vanessa.
Yeah, but I would say
Donna.
though, you know, coming back, and I understand that, and that sounds fantastic. But when you truly are a minority, finding a sponsor who is happy to do that is really hard, because first of all, I have found they need, unless they're the ones leading the team, they need validation from their peer group that it's okay to sponsor. And it's not just in the UK. So I remember when I arrived in Mozambique to do a project for DFID, and my client was the head of customs. And the first thing he said to me was, I want you to go and meet all these people, including my wife, because nobody in this country has a female advisor. Nobody. And all my friends think that I've got a mental problem. So I had to go around and speak to everyone so that they would know I was there for a reason. And it was because I was really good at what I do. And I see that that's a true story. It's and it's extreme to make a point. It's not as overt as that in the corporate life in the UK, because that's not our style and that's not our culture. But I do know there have been times in my career that before someone has said, I want to support you, they've gone and checked out with their peer group how they themselves will be perceived. Because, as one of them said, I'm about to raise my head, Donna, above the parapet. And I said, well, you need to know your head will remain intact because I will deliver.
Yeah, really, really, it just goes to the point of actually how this operates for women and women of colour in particular, that kind of exceptionalism, excellence that we have to often operate within that kind of framework. Somebody did say, opportunity meets preparation. Thanks. This is a well-informed audience that we have here. So Donna, that was opportunity meets preparation. It wasn't luck. So, loads of people are on that. My menopause brain couldn't get around that. But let's just switching this up a little bit, just because I think there's something there for organizations and individuals. But I just want to hear from you if you've individually won awards and what the impact of those awards have been on you and your professional and personal careers. And I will go to Diane first.
Yeah, I remember, I think it stands out for me the most because it was probably one of my first, and it was the NatWest Every Woman Awards. And oh God, it was so long ago, I can't even remember. I won't say what year. Anyway, I was probably one of the first people. And when I won it, it was really interesting. I was up against people like from the White Company, the lady who owns the White Company, some really big hitters. And like my awards, it wasn't just about that you were financially making a lot of money. It was also that you was giving back and doing something to give back to the community that you serve. And I genuinely, you won't believe I'm in PR, wasn't prepared because I genuinely thought I wasn't winning. I was the only person who looked like me in the whole of the process, the only person. And I remember, funny enough, Heather Melville was one of the few people of colour in the audience. I remember that. And when they said I'd won, I was there having a little natter, as you do. And so I never forget, I went up and received this award. I think it was Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister at the time. God. Anyway, it was Gordon Brown. And I remember just saying, oh, this award is not success for me. It just blurted out. And I remember the audience going completely quiet. And I said, because until there are more people who look like me, that's when success has really happened. Because I was the only one out of all the different categories who looked like me. It was shameful, absolutely shameful. But I remember it because it did change how people perceived me. I remember Coots Bank called me, I could actually open up an account if I wanted to and all this kind of thing. So it did, the visibility changed my landscape. And I did start to get through those doors of those corporate clients because they saw me. They saw me, and I had they had given me some sort of recognition, and they thought, oh, she must be quite good at what she does because she won. So I do know that winning awards works, and that's why I'm quite passionate about them.
And Donna, for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what was quite interesting was that the other people nominated me for my awards, and I was one of them, actually. So this is what I'm going to talk about. You know, she phoned me one night. We'd been out for dinner. She got home. She phoned me and she said, "What is your problem?" I said, "I don't know what you mean." She said, "You're a fantastic mentor." So I decided to mentor people of colour, so both men and women, people of colour. She said, "You are changing people's lives, and yet you talk about it as if all you did was meet for a cup of coffee." So she wrote my nomination that night. I think the closing was next day. She wrote my nomination. I had to give her some words, and I got shortlisted. So I went through. So it was for Mentor of the Year, and I wasn't going to go to the dinner because unfortunately my father-in-law had recently died, so I didn't want to go. And they kept phoning me. So my husband and I decided we would go. So we turn up at this dinner, and you know, a bit like Diane's point, you know, I look around the room, and then the only people of colour that are there besides myself and my husband are the waiting staff. And then we go down to the restaurant for the event. There's a few more people of colour, and I'm sitting there, and I sit with this table, and all these people are talking about all the things they've achieved. And then I won the award. And what was quite interesting, this is the impact point, was that every single one of the waiting staff came up to say, "We're so glad you won," because actually most of them were studying for university courses, and they had never met anyone that was black that had ever won an award. So it just helped them realise that their potential, I think, was endless.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. That's really, I mean, it just shows you that power of, if you can't see it, you can't be it. I know that we're having to kind of make some time up now. So Vanessa, what happened to you when you won an award and the impact on your community?
In the finance one, I think I was on a list, the top women under 40, and then I turned 41 and they kicked me off. Which I thought was really rude. So that's the first one. Then the second one, I actually lost to Heather Melville, and that's where our friendship started. I saw her in the category and I thought, I'm toast, you know, in terms of what she'd done for Focus Women. But the following year, I was nominated again. So Women in Banking and Finance. I went back, and for me, it was a real special moment because I took my mum and dad back with me, and I won't go into story about my background or stuff like that. I never thought I'd sit in a room like that and be able to show that to my mum and dad. So it was a really special moment, and it was a champion for women. And that was it must be a good 10 years ago, but it really did give me a voice in the room when it comes to talking about women in gender. And that really started it. But kind of, I've hung up my awards boots. My job is to judge them and give them out. But it was a wonderful feeling.
Great, because what comes out of all of that is the impact that you have on your communities, because they feel like they've won some of it as well. That's what those waiters and waitresses were talking about there, and I've experienced that too. But just moving on, because I'm aware of time, and one of the things I'm really good at is keeping to time. What is it that makes a good nomination? So we've got the Baton Awards. There are loads of awards out there, the We Are the City, other awards, but the Batons are out at the moment. We want to see good nominations from individuals backing themselves, from individuals seeing other people's talent and kind of nominating them. But what do we want to see in a good nomination? And let's go with Vanessa and then to Diane. We've got to be quick with this as well, because we want to get to the Q&A.
Tell me your story. Take me on an emotional or factual journey. You know, when I read it, I want to visualize that I'm with you, and I feel those barriers that you've overcome, and I see the impact that you're making. You know, there's nothing worse from a judge's perspective, and I judge about 5 different awards a year, is seeing someone with that's put a real minimal amount of effort into it, or someone's nominated them and they've not given the time that it needs, you know. And on these nominations, you can brag and boast. It's only the judges that are going to be seeing them. You know, they're not out there in the public domain. So I would say definitely give me cause and effect. I did this and this was the impact and stuff like that. So I know we've got to be quick, but I would definitely say those are the most fundamental things. You know, don't leave anything out. Even if you think, oh, that's insignificant, put it in. Let me read about it.
Great. So it's a kind of owning your story, taking up that space. Diane, what do you want to see in nominations for Baton?
I want to see, obviously, for you to shout about the great work you've done in your category, but it's really important, particularly for the Baton Awards, is we want to see what else you have done to impact on your community. For us, it's not just about, great, I've climbed up the ladder, which is great. I want to see that. But it's what else can you show or demonstrate that you have done to impact on your community? So please, I really want to see that put through on the nominations.
There's something also about self-nomination, isn't there? People backing themselves to nominate themselves. Would you agree, Vanessa?
Yeah, absolutely. We always encourage people, and nobody writes your story like you do. You know, I'm same as Donna. I've written many nominations for people, but I always have to go back to them to get those finer details. So yeah, self-nominate, imposter syndrome. If you can, let's just put it aside just for the Batons, right?
Donna, did you want to add something?
So, I mean, I'll just support everything that Vanessa and Diane says, you know, and the worst, you know, I've got a bit of advice. Sometimes you just got to get out of your own way and go do it.
Yeah, there's something about backing yourself in this. If on the call, there's a great book called The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. People go out, buy it, read it. It's a great book to read about backing yourself.
Fantastic book.
So it is a great book, isn't it? Right. We are going to go to some questions, and I'm going to try and navigate this now. The questions around, I think they're down the bottom, but I can't read it. That's such a long question.
How can you ask? Yeah, long.
What does the panel think about issues around mental health matters? You know, we've got a question here about visibility implies that you can see the change that you want to be, but then how does that play into issues to do with mental health?
Well, I think that's quite a complex question, but I know for me, it's one of the ways that stress was could be the thing that would drive me in the wrong direction. And you're going to love this response, Michelle, because what I discovered actually was the gym. I discovered
sport, physical activity.
That I, take an hour out of my day simply to recharge, enable me to be ready to go back in the next and to deal with whatever the world was gonna throw at me. And I think my mental capacity got better over time. The other thing I did was talk to my mum, because I always think I've got challenges, and then I speak to my mum and my dad. And then I hear the challenges that they have overcome. And I take huge amounts of inspiration from that. If they can do it, then what actually have I got to complain about? I know that sounds easy, but it gives you this fire in your belly to know that you can truly overcome.
But they act as your role model, don't they? And there's something about passing it on. And so one of the questions I did want to ask actually is about how you create that pathway for others. Once you've been nominated or you've won an award, how do you kind of continue to feed the pipeline of the baton, passing that baton, in the Olympic 100 meters final, right, racing down? I can't help myself. What are the small and big things that you can do to kind of really keep that momentum going? It's all well and good if you've got influence. There's no point in having influence if you don't use it. So how can you pass that along?
Well, for me, it's if you win, you have to then, for us in the group and for the team, if you win, you have to mentor someone. So it's not that you win and then you go, thank you very much. We also have the tribe, which is like a network, an alumni of people who have won. It can be judges, all different people, so that we still continue that work. And that's where we have master classes and sharing of experiences. We're talking about mentoring and sponsoring. So we do that throughout the year, so that and then you have the grand finale in November. But from November to the next November, we have workshops and all things happening in between. And that's what I think is important. It's not just an award ceremony. It's a movement. It's about trying to make real change.
Donna? Can I just say, you don't need to win an award to help other people. I mean, it's nothing against the two award. You know, you don't need an award to help other people, because if you've achieved something, you found a way to navigate, you can share that experience with someone else, so that, you know, it's easy for them. And it doesn't matter if they're above you, alongside you, below you. Everyone thinks it's about pulling people up. Well, sometimes it's about helping people stay up as well. And, you know, be prepared to offer help.
Great. Vanessa?
I mean, same thing. I make it my business to nominate people for awards, but I also make it my business to look at my social media feeds and to raise the voices of people within those feeds, as I say, to amplify their voices and stories. So to Donna's point, you know, you don't have to win an award to be able to provide that. You know, as they say, we rise by lifting others. We can do that in our daily business every single day. So I would say, you know, the pay it forward mentality, that's absolutely where we should be.
Yeah, and then sometimes we don't even know the things that we're strong at, and we need somebody else to show that to us. And that links into one of the questions here about confidence, and that whole thing about wanting to not be overconfident as they would see it as, and then they would see that as almost being showing off. So if you're not good or confident at highlighting your own successes, but because you don't want to appear to be showing off, what kind of advice would you give around that?
So my first point is that, you know, most development programs focus on things they think you need to do better. They don't focus on things you're really good at. So you need to start by thinking about what you're really good at, and playing to your strengths. And, you know, often you need to get some feedback from people, you know, that you know, and who, you know, will be honest with you about your strengths. Because when you play to your strengths, you're playing from a really strong platform. And then what you're doing is adding to your strengths. Not this imposter syndrome going, I'm really bad at all these things, and therefore I don't think I should be here.
Michelle, sorry.
Yeah, go on. I did a few years ago.
Wow, this is great.
Go, Vanessa. Go, Vanessa. Right? Go, Vanessa.
No, I'm in charge. Vanessa. Your turn, Vanessa.
A real quick point I just want to make that backs up Donna's around, you know, people's strengths. And sometimes, you know, we've got perceived weaknesses and this affects our confidence, but be careful where those weaknesses have come from. It's very easy for people to plant seeds in your mind and we grow them and they become a thing. You know, years ago, one of my bosses said, oh, you're not very good with numbers. So I grew that into some big old tree in my mind. So every time I was given something to do with numbers, in my head, I was going, I'm not good with numbers, because he was an individual that stood at stature and what he said because of where he sat in the organisation must be true. So I spent years feeling like that. So my only kind of piece of advice is sometimes be careful where you think your weaknesses manifest themselves and be careful of the opinions of others, because sometimes it's just noise.
Diane, your turn now. Great point.
What I was saying very quickly is I remember, you know, because sometimes you don't know what you're good at, or you think you do, but it's good to hear from other people that you trust. And I had a focus group on me, and I invited 9 key people in different areas of my life, whether it was the business side, whether it was marketing, my branding, and I actually had to pay for them to have something to eat. And they sat round a table and they literally critiqued me. It was the best thing I ever did.
Wow.
It was amazing.
A focus group on you. Oh, I love it. I love it.
It was.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. It's great. Brilliant. I mean, there's something about knowing yourself well. There's a really good test out there called the 16 personalities. It's linked to Myers-Briggs. So I would encourage people to do that as well, because that really kind of gives you an insight to some of your strengths and areas for development. I don't like calling them weaknesses. I'm one of those kind of positive mindset people, but yeah. So I think there's something about how do we raise our visibility using LinkedIn and social media? That's one of the questions that's come about. What would you say to that, Vanessa?
Again, it goes to my point earlier on around having a decent LinkedIn profile. Take some time on it. You know, it doesn't have to be chapter and verse, a couple of paragraphs. Tell me about you. It goes back to the shop window thing. Quantify. I was having this conversation with someone earlier on. If I wrote down there, I'm a project manager at an investment bank, versus I'm a project manager at an investment bank with a £200 million portfolio of change across 4 geographies involving 600 people. Do you see what happened there? The gravitas of that sentence has just gone up tenfold. And even if you work for someone who's got a big role, they're only in that big role because you're supporting them. So don't be scared to nick some of that. So I definitely think when I look you up, what's your story? If I Google you, what comes up? And invariably the first thing is going to be a LinkedIn profile. Direct me off then to other things. Otherwise I'm going to get nosy and I'm going to start digging.
Right. So great points. But I want to come back to this really good question here about navigating challenging individuals that can block your progress within an organization and they're quite senior. How would you deal with that?
So it happened to me.
Oh, Donna. It happened to you, Donna. Go for it,
yeah,
Donna.
it happened to me. And a bit like both Diane and Vanessa's point, I found a couple of allies who actually were more senior than the person that wanted to do the blocking. And the three of us sat down and we came up with a strategy about how to deal with this person and who should go and speak to them. And guess what? It wasn't me. It wasn't me because, you know, if I were to confront them, I would lose. And so you find your allies, work out your strategy. Sometimes the best way to deal with them is not to confront them. It's to find someone who's even more senior than them, who they are not prepared to take on.
And is that about, that's about using your voice, but using others to be able to hear your voice on your behalf?
And it's network internally to Vanessa's point, so that when you show up at someone's door and say, I really need your help. So, this is, you've got to be honest with people. You need their help. Be clear about what you need, why you need their help, and be clear what the outcome is you're trying to achieve. And then the good people, and there are lots of good people out there, will step up and they will help you. And if they can't help you, they'll find someone that can.
Brilliant. Okay. We have about 3 minutes left. One of the things that I always do is keep to time, people. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just give your final thoughts. And then I've got 2 minutes to do a little bit of a roundup. So over to you, Diane.
I would just like to say for everybody that, you know what? It's just love yourself. Really love yourself and really get to know you, know your strengths, get to know who you are a person, and get a great tribe around you. It's really important, whether that's in a corporate or whatever. That's really important. That's my biggest thing I can say. And put yourself forward. Just put yourself forward. Just come on now.
Thanks, Diane. Vanessa.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to add that, love yourself, love each other, without kind of going on the cheesy side of things. But, as I said to you earlier on, we could do a lot to help each other. I'm not a fan of anyone tearing anyone down, least of all women tearing women down. So, and again, just look at the people you've got around you. To Diane's point, remove the toxic people, keep the people around you that love you and show you support. And of course, nominate yourself for the Batons, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Again, and I'm going to get to these fabulous stories.
Thanks, Vanessa. And Donna, your final words.
Yeah, so my final words are, never forget that you are brilliant. No matter where you are in life, there is someone in your life that sees you as a leader. So draw strength from that. Block out the negative noises and know the strength that you have within yourself, because every day you wake up, it's a chance to change the world.
Thank you, Donna. That's amazing. We have heard from brilliant trailblazers today. We've heard about the responsibilities we can take individually, but also collectively, what organizations can do to actually foster cultures that recognize and reward talent. So go out there, people. The call to action is to nominate. Share this with your HR departments. Share this in your professional and personal networks. Do that work and nominate women of colour. We have to say a massive thanks and respect and props to this amazing panel. We had so many people on here saying how amazing you were. The BatonAwards.com, check it out. Thank you to Diane, Donna and Vanessa, all of the back staff people, Theo, Serena, Lauren and Sarita. And we value all of you on this webinar who've come along and supported on this Thursday evening. And I'm going to leave you with one quote that encourages you to be courageous in all of your efforts around this. And it is a Maya Angelou quote that says, if one has courage, nothing can dim the light from within. So that's about shining your light and shining other people's light. So I wish you a good night and thank you very much for tuning in. That's it from the Baton Awards this evening.
God. Was it good? You know when you just, you can't